Ladies and gentlemen, would you welcome Steve Shope?
The location of our event is really significant tonight for a couple of reasons. I have personal ties to this building and to the surrounding neighborhoods. Many years ago, this was home to an actual pajama factory. Many of you may remember Welton's. My grandmother actually worked here at one point, as did one of my aunts, and my mother worked here briefly. I grew up just down the street from here. For the first 14 years of my life, we lived around the intersection of Memorial and Fifth Avenues. So this is, in many ways, my old stomping ground. But the location of this event is significant tonight for another very important reason, and that is the Pajama Factory is a promising example of the type of economic development that our area so desperately needs. The type of economic development that supports small businesses. Small businesses, as you may know, are the backbone of our economy. They strengthen our communities, and they employ the majority of our working class population. It's also important to note that in the past decade, 80% of all new jobs that were created by small businesses. And there's a complementary relationship that exists between small businesses and the middle class. And it's this relationship that drives our economic engine. And here's how it works. When the middle class is healthy and has extra money, they spend it. And when they spend it, it creates consumer demand, which creates business opportunity, which creates more jobs for the working class. This is a proven formula that works. The problem that we're facing right now is our middle class has been weakened by the recent recession and by the downturn in our economy. And we need to do something about it. We need more economic development that supports small businesses and strengthens our working class. It's vital to the growth of our economy. And it's also vital to the health of our democracy. We're facing an economic epidemic in this country. And without strong, deliberate action, the middle class as we know it may cease to exist. For too long in America, our government's economic philosophies have largely been to strengthen big corporations. They do this through funding, tax breaks, bailouts, you name it. And they would like to convince us that these investments will eventually trickle down and benefit the working class. But statistics show that that simply does not play out. In fact, since the early 1980s, the wealth of the middle class has gradually declined. And during the recent recession of 2008-2009, the amount of wealth collectively owned by the middle class was reduced by 40%. 40% in just 2 years' time, in what was one of the largest wealth transfers in American history. We now have a very small group of wealthy citizens that make up less than 15% of our total population that now own nearly 80% of our nation's wealth. And this happened as a direct result of government policies that favor the rich and strengthen big corporations. Policies that condone corporate greed at the expense of working class taxpayers. And this not only weakens our economy, it threatens our democracy. Because when this very small group of people, when less than 15% of our population has more influence in our government than do we the people, our democracy ceases to exist. And at that point, we will have in effect become a government of the people, by the corporations, for the wealthy. And we cannot allow that to happen. But you need to know that that reality may loom closer than you might think. Because a lot of economists are predicting a double-dip recession. Federal and state governments are projecting budget deficits in 2011 and beyond. Unemployment still hovering around 10%. The next wave of recession may be just around the corner. And if the first wave of recession, which hit a fairly healthy economy, which hit a fairly stable middle class, if the first wave caused one of the greatest wealth transfers in history, what will the second wave bring? What devastation will it cause a working class that's already on its knees? We need to change our economic policies. We need to change the culture of our government. Now, can this be done on the federal level? I don't know. I would like to think that it can be, but I mean, that's somebody else's battle right now. I know this. These same problems plague our local economy. And they affect the working class citizens of Lycoming County. And I am absolutely confident that we can effectively address these issues on the local level. That we can create a better quality of life for our families and for our neighbors. Our greatest potential for strengthening our middle class, strengthening our economy, and strengthening our democracy exists here at the local level. And if we are to realize economic recovery and eventually economic prosperity, we need to stop supporting development that prospers one group of people at the expense of another. We cannot condone economic development that creates profits for some, while at the same time creates liabilities for others. We need a balanced approach to economic governance that serves the interests of all citizens, of all classes, big corporations and small businesses, the west end of the county and the east end of the county, rural Lycoming County and downtown Williamsport. This is the type of equality that our frame of government was intended to provide. You know, this is not the first time that we've stood at the crossroads of economic indifference, where on one hand you have a path that leads to prosperity for some, but at the expense of others. And on the other hand, a path paved in equality that leads to shared prosperity. The Civil War was a prime example of this very scenario. Because the Civil War was as much about economic development as it was about social change. At the center of that debate was who was going to develop the western part of our country. Southern states had a plan that would produce wealth for a relatively small segment of society, but at the expense of a lesser class, utilizing slave labor. Northern states had philosophical and moral objections to the expansion of those ideals. And the Civil War ensued. And I'm reminded of the words that President Abraham Lincoln spoke when he delivered his Gettysburg Address on a great battlefield of that war. And he urged the crowd that had gathered that day when he said, "We here must highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." Our present-day circumstances are very similar. Only let us here highly resolve that we will not live in vain, that we will accept the responsibility of ushering in a new birth of freedom, that this government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth, not on our watch, not while we stand by able-bodied, not while we possess the intellect and the ambition to change the course of our future. The idea of a government that plans for and serves the interests of all its citizens is not a democratic concept. It's not a Republican concept. And it's by no means a new concept. Over 300 years ago, a man named William Penn came to this place because he had inherited the tract of land that we know as Pennsylvania. And he had a vision for this land. His vision, which he called the Holy Experiment, was to create a community where people of all backgrounds and ethnicities and religious affiliations could live together in peace and share in the prosperity of this land. And he created a frame of government that would protect and serve those rights. And William Penn's vision transcended Pennsylvania because he believed that peace and liberty and prosperity were the desires of all men, of all nations. And he actually wrote that the nations want a precedent. And if we here in Pennsylvania can do the thing that is truly wise and just, we can create the example. And my God will make it the seed of a nation. And those words, by the way, are inscribed in our Capitol Rotunda in Harrisburg. And how prophetic was that vision? Just 75 years after William Penn delivered his Charter of Privileges to the people of Pennsylvania, our founding fathers gathered in Philadelphia to begin designing the framework of government for the United States. A framework largely built on William Penn's vision of a Commonwealth government. And right now, there are cities and towns and townships and counties across this country that are facing the same economic obstacles that we face. They share the same hopes and fears that we possess. And they're looking for a precedent. And who's more qualified than we are? As Pennsylvanians, it's in our DNA. And if we can come together, Republicans and Democrats, independents and libertarians, big corporations, small businesses, rich and poor, if we can come together and put aside our differences, we can create that precedent. We can be the example of economic prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Steve Shope, and I'm running for County Commissioner in 2011 because the decisions made over the next couple of years are going to define our futures for decades to come. And we need leadership that will make sure all of our interests are being represented in those plans. I'm running for County Commissioner because we need a comprehensive economic development plan that serves all segments of our society. And that will require elected officials that can rise above politics and do what we know is the right thing to do. I'm running for County Commissioner because with great adversity comes great opportunity. And I believe together we can overcome the obstacles before us and create a prosperous future. And I need your help. I need your help not just to get elected to this position. I need your help once I'm elected to this position. Because a government of the people, by the people, and for the people requires so much more from us than simply casting a vote twice a year. It requires our active, ongoing participation. And good government not only includes us, it empowers us. We all come from different backgrounds. We have different skill sets, different life experiences. But they're all equally important and vital for moving us forward. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you in that process. Thank you so much.